as a boilermaker, I was required to know how to read blueprints and actually lay the lines on the steel, burn it out, and fit it together to end up with a finished product. It might be a pair of steps, might be a platform, might be something on top of the battery. It was dirty work, frequently uncomfortable, frequently dangerous. But it was nice when I figured I was making $12 an hour to do it.
Woman, 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 woman of steel.
Right now, I'm employed as a waitress on Route 51. It's just as hard, just as demanding, just as taxing as working in the mill is. The only difference is you get a lot less respect. People seem to look on waitresses as second-class citizens. Oh, I get paid a lot. I get paid $2.01 an hour. The only fringe benefit that I get is a free pizza for every shift that I work.
I'm a woman of steel, fighting for a living. She's a woman of steel, sweating every dime.
2.5 years ago, when we were laid off from our jobs in the steel industry, we decided to tell the story of women of steel. So together we produced this documentary about our friends that we used to work with. My name is Beth Dessler, and I drove a steel carrier for U.S. Steel for 5 years. Today, that mill is shut down virtually, like many others in Buffalo, Youngstown, and Birmingham. But during the 70s, these mills provided an opportunity for thousands of working women to break out of traditional women's work and become well-paid steel workers. Now, those jobs are gone, and we're back where we started. First, let's go back to the 60s before these opportunities opened up for women. For Pat Turnell, the story started in 1969, shortly after her marriage broke up.
Well, I call it the Cinderella theory. I mean, there's Prince Charming's going to come along and sweep me off my feet and take me off to a castle, and everything's going to be beautiful. Unfortunately, Prince Charming turned out to be more of a frog than he did a prince. You know, and I ended up with 3 kids to support. I mean, I was on welfare, which I had to fight to get on. They kept telling me, come back tomorrow and fill out some more papers. And finally, one Friday, I took my 2 oldest ones, which was Kelly and Tommy, with me. And I said, look, I haven't got money to feed them. I haven't got money to buy bread. I said, now, you know, either you give me some help or I'm leaving them here with you. You feed them over the weekend. That's right. Well, then I proceeded to try to work my way off welfare, which I did, but I did it with waitress job. You know, some nights I made just enough money to pay a babysitter.
Since the 1960s, single women have headed up a majority of the families below the poverty line. The problem has been especially serious for minority women. In 1970, Cheryl Johnson also became a single mother, working in a low-paid social service job.
At that time, I was a single parent with 5 small children. Although I'd been into the workforce, it was not as just the sole supporter of the family. And it was to a point now where I was going to be the sole supporter of that family. At that time, I was living in the projects. It was an 8-story building. I was on the 6th floor. And that added to the depression. And it was just very, very depressing. And I wasn't into women issues. I was into survival.
The avenues to better paying jobs were closed to Cheryl and Patty. Most of the nation's steel mills simply did not hire women as production workers, except for World War II. We only got in as a result of pressure from civil rights and women's groups. With the legal backing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the combined movements for equal rights and opportunities gained momentum into the early 70s. This led to the signing of an agreement in 1974.
It was announced in Washington today that 9 of the nation's biggest steel companies have agreed to a 5-year plan aimed at ensuring equal opportunities for minorities and for women. The government said the settlement is the largest of its kind it has ever achieved. ABC's Bill Zimmerman has details.
The 9 firms agreeing to the settlement represent more than 75% of the steel industry and employ more than 40,000 black, Spanish surnamed, and women workers. The companies have agreed to end long-time discriminatory practices and to pay more than $30 million in retribution.
That was the first midnight I ever worked in my life. I went in, and I didn't know whether to look up, down, or which way. Because when I looked up, I saw a crane, but I was scared I'd fall into a hole. So I had to look down to make sure I didn't trip. And then I heard trains coming, and I didn't know what was going on, and it was all new to me. But anyhow, being in the trades, I learned how to use tools. I learned how to do wiring. I learned how to break down motors, put motors back together again, which all I felt was very interesting.
When I started, I worked on a track gang where I repaired railroad tracks and ties, drove spikes, you know, tore out old ones. Because of the consent decree, they wanted to get minorities into apprenticeships. I applied for a Boilermaker apprenticeship, and I started that, which took me about 4 years to get through. We worked frequently inside the main, you know, in the middle of summer, inside a steel tunnel, welding it together and dogging it together, or burning it out to fit.
At Wheeling Pittsburgh's Monessen plant, Sherry Ortolona is one of the few women still working. Her plant hasn't been shut down, though there have been cutbacks. Like many of the women I worked with, Sherry has been raising her 2 daughters on her own for 10 years.
Start laying them again, Dave?
She is in the trades, but often works as a laborer because of her low seniority.
My job is the millwright helper in the blooming mill, mechanical department, which I started 9 years ago. When I first come into the mill breaks down. You repair anything that breaks down, especially on a rolling turn. You get in there, do it fast, and let the mill blow back up again. It was hard for me at first because I didn't know a come along from a wrench, okay? And I remember I was up here maybe 3 weeks, and there was a breakdown. And one millwright said, "Would you please go down and get a come along?" I said, "I would if I knew what it was. Could you describe it for me?" Well, he did, and like you sort of pick up from there. I had to learn how to burn. And to me, that was the hardest thing for me to pick up, the burning, because at times you have to have a very steady hand. And I was always so nervous about it. I wasn't afraid of it, just nervous. I didn't want to make a mistake. And it took me a little longer to get the confidence on burning. And I have 2 guys from work to thank for that, and they took the time to show me, you know. And I says, I'll always appreciate it.
Had a job in the mill, learned to burn hot iron. I was proud of my trade, and my bills got paid. Hot days and long nights, working close to the fire, grinding steel to buy the kids another meal. I had to be strong, I had to learn to get along, but people kept saying, "Hey lady, you don't belong." But I'm a woman of steel, fighting for a living. She's a woman of steel, sweating every dime. Woman of steel.
My father's Italian, old-fashioned, straight through and through. When he called me and told me about this job, you know, my dad, this represented security for me and my children and his grandchildren, okay? But I says, the shock that he wanted me to get into the mill, you know, being that my dad worked there for 30-some years and was phased out. And he was, to put it bluntly, hell-bent on me getting a job in the mill.
Okay. Anytime you go from $90 a week to $350 a week, that helps make changes in your life. Having medical coverage made all the difference in the world. Now I didn't have to wait until the kids were almost about to pass out before I took them to the doctor. You know, you consider those things when you don't have medical coverage. You know, and they had took them all to the dentist immediately. You know, I just lined the appointments up. My little 8-year-old Tina needed protective crowns on 4 of her teeth, which ran close to $600, which her permanent teeth would have came in rotten if we hadn't got those crowns put on them.
See, it'd be nice, dear, if you'd hang your clothes up. I not only could support my family,
You're going to have to get up on your own.
but we had money to do things together. But I also had some money to spend on me. And what I was doing was attending night school. To me, the most important quality of life or item in life is independence. And this is what money represents.
The price for independence runs high. A steel mill is a harsh workplace for women or men, but breaking into a man's world presented special challenges to women.
The general foreman just had sort of the look on his face when I walked in the room that I had seen several places in the mill by guys who says, "You don't belong here."
Well, mostly what they were trying to do was, okay, here you are, you're our minority, and we got you, but that doesn't mean we're going to teach you anything.
And what it was a fear tactic. You know, I'm going to frighten her into not taking this apprenticeship. Well, instead of frightening me into not taking it, he made me angry, and which made it worse for him because it made me all the more determined that I was going to take it.
A girl is raised to be nice. Be a nice little girl, you know, and smile. And I found out that the more I fought back with them, the more they respected me.
But on the same note as a girl being raised to smile, a girl's being raised to smile, but then she becomes a woman, she gets married and she has children, and the husband walks off and leaves her. And all of a sudden she finds herself in a situation where she's the mother, the father, the breadwinner, and everything else, and that's when she's got to start becoming a fighter.
Yeah, the smile doesn't
right, the smile doesn't get it.
I think women in the mill as a whole, it's a big misconception in a lot of people's minds. I think they picture a woman working in the mill as this big, loud, broad, you know.
What are you talking about?
And that's not true. I mean, it's...
Cheryl, Patty, Linda, Carol, and I shared many hard times in the mill. We learned to laugh at ourselves, but we also learned how to fight together to improve our lives.
When we come in and we fought the company for clean locker rooms, I had guys say to me, well, look, our locker room's in terrible shape. Why should you have it nice when we don't? And I said, if you don't have it nice, whose fault is that, turkey? It's the law. You know, you got to fight for it. Now, I did find out with the union's only as good as the people that are running it. And they're only as good as the people that get up off their ass and vote for them or go to the meetings.
When I got into the mill, I had many jobs, but that was the first job that I ever had that was a union job. And at least you had a feeling that there was somebody behind you. You didn't know how powerful or how weak they are, but there was someone there that could possibly help you. When things were getting rough, instead of running to the locker room and boo-hooing, getting information and going to the union and having our union fight for us. I've seen a lot of women sitting in the locker room after a shipping crying instead of fighting.
Don't you think it was also a feeling of hey, we can fight City Hall?
To try to control your destiny a little bit, yeah. Sure. To be able to try to do something to help yourself instead of just sitting back and saying, well, this is going to happen.
The demolition of blast furnaces in the early 80s marked the decline of American steel. The workers, unions, and communities involved fell victim to sweeping cuts made in distant corporate boardrooms. First, there were layoffs. Then came the permanent shutdowns. Youngstown, Ambridge, Johnstown, Mesta Machine, and dozens of partial shutdowns. Unemployment rates in the Pittsburgh area soared to levels not seen since the 1930s. By 1982, the communities were fighting back. Crisis hotlines, food banks, political lobbies, community buyouts of closed steel mills, and mass demonstrations.
Unemployed steelworkers and their supporters rallied and marched through downtown Pittsburgh today. Their purpose was to help those who are out of work find jobs or relief from the tight economy. Stuart Brown has more.
Reagan, he's no good. Send him back to Hollywood. Reagan, he's no good. Send him back to Hollywood.
With their feet and with their voices, they expressed the frustrations of the growing force of jobless steelworkers. Almost 15,000 in the city, 25,000 in the Mon Valley, 300,000 nationwide. But this was an
We were the last to come, so we were the first to go. So we appeared on the list first.
You'd work a month, maybe be off 2 or 3 weeks, come back for 2 or 3 months, be off another few weeks. And then we'd work steady again for maybe a year and a half.
Then I worked steady again for about 4 months, and finally we were laid off in October of 1981.
Well, this is when the bottom dropped out. And everyone, including myself, never for 1 minute thought that it would be that bad.
I got laid off in the beginning of December. By the following December, my unemployment was out.
We got to fight to extend unemployment benefits to everyone that's out of work as long as it takes to get a job.
What I'd like to know from our state representatives and senators is where do I go? Who do I have to turn to with overdue bills and no money?
So many of them were losing homes, cars, everything they worked years for. I mean, it was enough to make you sit down and cry, really.
I got trouble. Hire a computer, hire a machine, and then they call the product the American dream, and it ain't working. It's no surprise when you ain't working.
The loss of jobs, taxes, and services devastated many steel towns. Some of the unemployed uprooted their families to seek work elsewhere. Those who stayed found it was hard to find a job, any job. Hidden within this community in crisis lies our story. The women of steel face special problems, ones unique to women. Studies on industrial layoffs have shown that it's harder for women to find reemployment than the men they worked with. Women who were steelworkers found their options limited, once again, to traditional women's jobs, ones that are hard and important, but where they are underpaid and undervalued, with little chance for advancement.
Trouble, got trouble, I've been laid off, trouble tonight. I've been laid off, trouble, got trouble, I've been laid off, trouble tonight. I've been laid off, trouble, got trouble.
Last December, there was no Christmas in this house. There was absolutely no Christmas. I mean, we were lucky that we could eat. During that time, the only income we had was my daughter's 2 part-time jobs, combined with what little bit of money my son was able to send home from the service, combined with the princely amount of $170 a month child support for 2 children. Right now, I'm employed as a waitress at Pizza Hut on Route 51. But Pizza Hut, what they call waitress, is more involved than I've ever had. I mean, we do major cleaning, and we wash dishes and wash windows and things of that sort. In this particular case, they can require me to do one thing one day and change it the following day. If they decide to play games with you, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. The only way you benefit is if someone in management likes you. Now, with the union, you have recourse. You have a way to fight if they're being unfair or unrealistic or something of that sort. Non-union, you're stuck. When I first started at the mill, I was making approximately $5 an hour. Now, through the apprenticeship, for a total period of 6 years, I eventually worked my way up to top rate to where I was making $12 an hour when I was laid off. Of course, the job I now have pays $2 an hour.
Yes, my name is Cheryl Johnson. I'm from the Mon Valley Unemployed Committee. Last week I came into the office and dropped off some flyers for the hearings on Duquesne Light at Point Park University. I feel like I'm sort of going around in a circle because I left social work intentionally going into the mill to make more money, and I came back around through being a receptionist, which I was in the 60s, and right now I'm employed with the Mon Valley Unemployed Committee. Where in the mill I was making approximately $10.50 an hour. Here at Mon Valley I'll be making $6 an hour, and I don't have any medical coverage in this contract at all. No dental coverage, no medical coverage.
The other day, and she never should.
Yeah, the company's waiting for us to call them back. Move, babe. Move, Giovanna. It's been a game of, I consider it a game, you know, of who you pay today. You know, and what do you say to them when they call on the phone, you know? Because I can understand them saying, well, we hear this story from 200,000 people, because there are 200,000 people out there who can't pay their mortgage. So when the bill collector says that, I can sympathize with him, but I also expect him to sympathize with me, that I just don't have the money and I need some place to stay. And it's not that for 9 years since we've been living in this house, I haven't paid my mortgage. We have paid it, but there's a crisis here and we can't do it.
Yeah, what's wrong with the weed?
Oh, another one? Okay. Push down.
Real job.
There we go. Hard, honey.
Throughout their 9-year marriage, Cheryl and her second husband, Jim, have weathered many financial crises. Even combining Cheryl's income with Jim's modest salary as a counselor, 2 years ago, the Johnsons found they could not pay the rising gas bills to heat their home.
We could either eat or we could pay utility bills along with the other bills. And that's what we figured out. We could eliminate the heating.
We burn wood and coal, you know, and that's to save on utilities. So we've tried to cut the corners as much as possible, and we come up with a pretty trim picture, you know. It seems to be that right now the priorities are keeping the family together, keeping the mortgage, and trying to get out of debt as best we can.
You pay the mortgage because where are you going to take 7 people? 2 dogs and 2 cats. Not too many places in the world.
Overall, as far as what I think our philosophy should be, yeah, I think we should go to church and be able to get something that's maybe on a spiritual level. A lot of the other things we do are on a material level, so we kind of balance out our lives a little bit.
I think that that's been a really important part of the strength that I have.
Because of the change in pay, it's a constant struggle just to pay the rent. I mean, buying food is a real biggie. We frequently dine on the pizza that is part of my pay that I bring home after work. When we were first laid off, I did get involved in the food bank because it was a bad problem, even with unemployment pay. Eventually, it got so big that we had 3 separate distribution sites, and I was in charge of one. Thank you, dear. Started working on the food bank in March of '82, and now I'm just a recipient. But the reason I am is because there is no jobs out there. My job is considered part-time, which means they'll put me as many hours, anywhere from 20 to 40 a week. And of course, come winter, things will slow down. It's going to be even harder. I'm in a position where I need the food bank. I mean, maybe they don't give us meat. Maybe it's not a balanced diet, but every little bit helps. Oh, I don't want that. I don't want whiskey sour mix. Not unless you're giving out the liquor to go with it.
Jobs, not hot air! Jobs, not hot air! Jobs, not hot air! Jobs, not hot air! Jobs, not hot air!
What we're doing down here is a group of unemployed workers, not only from the Mon Valley Unemployed Committee, but also from other unemployed committees jointly in this area, is disputing the unemployment statistics that came out today regarding the unemployment situation in the state.
Right. We're not going to let them ignore us. We're going to start right now by going upstairs and talking to the staff of 2 senators from our state. And we're going to very simply ask them, what is their plan?
They seem to think they give us cheese and butter and we're all going to be smiling and walk away because they fed us. But cheese and butter is just not enough for American people to survive.
As a girl, they said, be a lady. Then I worked as a woman of steel.
It was worth the struggle. I mean, it was even to the point where the guys in the gang treated me like a person. And then it was like I went through all of this, and the next thing, it's all wiped out. And the big crime is all I wanted to do was support my family.
For the last 3 years, just like Cheryl and Patty, I've only been able to find low-paying work. Today, I'm supporting myself by washing bottles in a biology lab while I go back to school through a displaced workers program. The decline of the steel industry is only part of the reason why we're back where we started. We've all watched the political climate change over the last 4 years. Today, most federal contractors no longer have to file affirmative action plans, even though they clearly helped thousands of women and minorities. And a woman still only makes 60 cents for each dollar a man makes.
I think what we need a jobs program where jobs are created. I think that's what we need, are jobs to be available, and then affirmative action to make sure that we get a shot at it. Right, just give us a fair shot. That's all we're asking, you know? That everyone gets a fair shot at these jobs, not that it's just limited to certain people.
But that's where we as women have to stick together and take our stand and not be pushed back. It's up to us to see that affirmative action don't fade out.
At my age, by the time things roll around to where I can start to work my way up, I'm going to be too old. But my priorities now are to get my children off to a good start.
Temporarily, we're going to be down. But I think as we unite and keep, our eye on the front line, there's, still enough fight left in us and enough of that gutsy from being in the mill atmosphere that we're going to fight towards something better. I mean, there's still highways being built. There's still bridges being built. I mean, U.S. Steel might have stopped, but a lot of the things have started.
It's an uphill battle all the way, because you go so far and you get knocked back down, you go so far and you get knocked back down again. But if you get enough women behind you, you'd be surprised what you can do.
But I don't accept the verdict. It's an old one anyway. 'Cause nowadays a woman cannot afford to live on less than equal pay. Don't you know she can't afford to live on less than equal pay? And so we gotta fight back in large numbers, fight back. I can't make it alone. Fight back in large numbers. Together we can choose our own roles. Together we will choose our own roles. Women all around the world, every color, religion, and age. One thing we've got in common: autonomy is what we crave. Our independence must be safe. And so we gotta fight back.